Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Sportsbook Confidential, live from the FingerLicks1.com studios in Seneca Falls. My name is John Sullivan, and this little show here is to help you learn and grow as a sports bettor. And we have a super big show today. Lots to talk about. I've got my little mini SU helmet with a Donovan McNabb signature on it, and Mr. McNabb is going to be at the Del Lago Sportsbook in about a half an hour to make the very first sports bet in that casino. So very exciting later today. As a matter of fact, I'll probably head over there after the show and see what's what. You can find me with my little orange cap on if you want to come say hi. We've got lots to talk about today. We're going to preview the NFC East. I've got fantasy running backs to talk about, fantasy defenses to talk about. We've got week one of college football starting tomorrow through next Thursday. I've got 5 or 6 games to look at there. We've got CFL week 11. I'm having my worst CFL year ever, and that continued this past week, and we'll find out about that shortly. But let's try to cram it all in and get on over to the sports book and see what's going on over there. So let's start by updating my bankroll. And my losing streak continues the 4th week in a row that I have gone down. 0-3 last week. Very disappointing. We had the Argonauts +8. Had a chance to cover late in that game. About 3.5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. And the Toronto coach chose to punt down 13. So that killed that bet. The Red Blacks over 48 that game, got nowhere close to 48. The Tiger Cats defense is pretty good, but their offense is pretty crummy. And then we had the Alouettes under 51 at the Stampeders, and that looked like it was going to win, but Alouettes managed to score 11 points in the last 4 minutes of the game to send it to overtime, and it went to double overtime, and it ended up being like 75 or 76 points scored in that game. And the Alouettes were the upset winners there. So 0-3, you do the math, it's minus $57. New bankroll, 524. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. And bet size is now reduced to 17 as we divide by 30 of our bankroll because we're selective sports bettors, and we only make a few bets every week. So that's where we're at. So let's get right into our NFL preview this week, and we're starting with the NFC East. And for those of you that are not familiar with the divisions, the NFC East includes the Philadelphia Eagles, the Dallas Cowboys, the Washington Potato Skins, and the New York Giants. And a very interesting division because off the top of your head, you see the Eagles as recent Super Bowl champions. You see the Cowboys as a playoff team, and then you have the also Rams. But I think this division is a lot more closer than most people think. So let's get into it, and we're going to start with the Eagles as they're the favorite to win the division. Season win total over under 9. You think if you're a believer in the Eagles and possibly another Super Bowl run, that should be an easy over bet for you. To win the NFC East, minus 130, prohibitive favorites to win the division. But to win the NFC, plus 659 or about 6.5 to 1. And to win the Super Bowl, over 13 to 1. Those are pretty good Super Bowl odds for a team that's considered a Super Bowl favorite. With the Eagles, looking over their roster today, I see obviously we have quarterback depth. We have Carson Wentz, who's never really played a full season of competitive football where they're playoff contenders. He's been hurt and been shut down. And then their backup is Nate Sudfeld, and he's injured currently. And then Cody Kessler is the third quarterback. So it makes you wonder, if they go 14-2 or whatever, then Wentz gets hurt again, they really should not. They should use him as sparingly as possible during the regular season. Maybe he's good to go now. I don't know, but it seems like he breaks down a lot. And the right side of the O-line is currently injured, so the two the right guard and the right tackle, the starters, are down right now, and that would concern me. It's the strong side for the quarterback, so it's not his blind side, but it could affect the running game. They have a decent running game. Darren Sproles is coming back for one more year, and that'll help with the return game as well. But pretty straightforward with the Eagles. Good coaching. The favorite over the other teams in the division. So the second choice is the Cowboys, and also season win total over under of 9, which would make you think that these teams are, neck and neck. And to win the NFC East, plus 179. If all of the Cowboys stars are healthy, which they currently are not, or they're holding out, but if they're all on the team and healthy, plus 179 is a pretty nice number just to win the division. Once again, you got to let the sportsbook hold on to your money for 17 weeks, but you got to decide whether that's good for you or a good bet for you or not. To win the NFC, 12-1. To win the Super Bowl, 26 plus to 1. Those are pretty juicy odds for a Super Bowl bet on the Cowboys. As much as I dislike the Dallas Cowboys, that's a pretty fat number. Dak Prescott, this holdout with Ezekiel Elliott is very interesting how it's going to play out, because if his holdout is successful and he signs a new deal, Dak Prescott is going to hold out next year. He's going to do the exact same thing. And I don't think the Cowboys want that. I'm not really sure what their game plan is. They have, for stopgap running back, I think they're going to be good enough. But he is definitely an above average running back, and they're getting kind of replacement level off the Alfred Morris and the other fella. The name escapes me at the moment. But obviously, for a long-haul season, Alfred Morris has not been able to stay healthy for a full season in a long time. And the offensive line, 3 of the starters of the offensive line are currently injured. And if that turns out to be long-term issues with 2 out of those 3 guys, it's not going to be a great year for whoever's in the backfield for this team. And also Amari Cooper, the wide receiver, is also, they're hoping he's going to be ready for week 1. But if he is injured or out for a length of time, that is really going to hurt their overall game, because they don't have depth of receivers. And even on the defensive side of the ball, Sean Lee has been hurt a lot, and his better days may be behind him. So expect it to be good. Jason Garrett does not always coach optimally, but I don't know. I don't know about this team. It could be really good or really bad. And then moving on to the next name on the list, the Washington Skins. Season win total over under 6.5. To win the NFC East, 7-12, about 7-1. Win the NFC, 46 plus to 1. To win the Super Bowl, almost 122 to 1. And obviously, we have quarterback issues here. All of these teams in this division have quarterback issues. So you had Alex Smith with his horrific injury last year, will not be playing at all this year. And then you had Colt McCoy, who came in and played really well. I was surprised how well he played. And then he broke his leg, and in the recovery period, he was mistreated, and it looks like he is going to miss another year as well. So you have the draft, you have Case Keenum, and you have the drafted Haskins. So those are your 2 quarterbacks, and what are you going to get? You're going to get good Case Keenum, like who was with the Minnesota Vikings, or you're going to get, you don't know what you're going to get with a rookie. Definitely some growing pains. And then the receivers, you've got Vernon Davis and a tight end. And Jordan Reed is the other tight end. he is injured. And you've got Doxson, who's a good receiver. Paul Richardson, who used to be with the Seahawks, also injured. So there's no receiver depth. You've got some good running backs there. This team, if they can play ball control, I don't think the defense is bad. If they could play ball control, I think the over 6.5 is a good play here. It comes down to their quarterback play, what you're going to get. And if they're starting Haskins, boy, he better be something special. Otherwise, it could be a long year. And last but not least, for all you local New York Giants fans, I can't find my Giants card here, but we'll talk about them really quickly. The over-under is 6 wins. To win the NFC East is 15.5 to 1. To win the NFC, 54 plus to 1. And to win the Super Bowl, 113 plus 113 to 1. Which is interesting because they're picked to finish last in the division, but their Super Bowl odds are shorter than the Redskins. So with the Giants, obviously you have quarterback issues. Is Eli Manning washed up? Is Daniel Jones ready? Don't know. And obviously you've got Saquon Barkley, who excelled with an average offensive line last year. So imagine if this guy was playing behind the Chiefs' offensive line or the Broncos' offensive line or the Chargers' offensive line. What kind of numbers he could put up. They have more receiver issues as well. And the Giants all around is a team that has lots of holes still to fill. There's not odds attractive enough for me to bet them on the Super Bowl or the NFC. 15.5 to 1 to win the NFC East. I have to say that there's no real outstanding team in this division. And if Wentz goes down, Ezekiel holds out for a whole year, the division's up for grabs. I can't see myself putting any money down on the Giants to win the division, but an injury or two and the Giants getting over 6 wins is very doable. This is a parity league, and they'll get an easier schedule. So sorry that I lost my Giants card there, but that's it for the NFC East. And we got one more week next week with the AFC East, and then we'll be ready for the real thing. So very exciting. And we're going to continue our fantasy preview, and we are going to start with fantasy running backs. And what I've done here is I've ranked my personal preferences for fantasy running backs. I'm not telling you where to draft them. I'm telling you who I think will be the best running backs for season-long fantasy. And I broke them down into 2 categories, top picks and then later picks. And, with most people play in like a 10 or a 12-team league, and they have 12 rounds, so they're going to get 2 to 3 running backs. So you're looking at the top 24, and then you just fill with somebody else, like maybe, a backup in case your starter gets injured or something like that. So let's take a quick rundown of this list. The top 3 are pretty much, you could go to anybody's fantasy list for running backs, and these top 3 will probably be there. Saquon Barkley, we just talked about him. Christian McCaffrey for the Panthers. And if Cam Newton is hurt for a period of time, that he's even more valuable because they'll try to run more and they'll throw shorter passes. Alvin Kamara for the New Orleans Saints. He's the number 1 guy now. Ingram is gone, so expect him to get a heavy workload. David Johnson, I'm very high on this year because the Arizona Cardinals are going to run on offense. That's like an air raid offense, a lot of short balls. Michael Crabtree signed with Arizona because he knows they're going to throw a lot. They may not win very many games, but especially if they're behind, they're going to be throwing even more. One of the guys I follow on Twitter says he could catch 100 balls this year. Ezekiel Elliott, assuming he gets his contract worked out, if he looks like he's holding out for 4 weeks, just let somebody else take that risk. But obviously, if he signs, he's training, so if he signs, he'll be in shape. James Conner for Pittsburgh, another guy getting a heavy workload. He proved that he could stay healthy for a whole year last year, so we hope that more of the same. And Devonta Freeman is now the number 1 guy in Atlanta, and he is going to get the lion's share of the workload. You can see I put undervalued there, which means if I say he's undervalued, that means that he will probably be in the later rounds. Most people take their top running backs in the first 2 rounds, so he might be available in round 3 or 4. But if you're looking to take the best player available, I would just go right down this list. Chris Carson for Seattle, also undervalued. Seattle's become a very run-heavy offense, and he apparently is outplaying the other running backs in Seattle, so expect him to get a lot of carries. Nick Chubb, I think, is overvalued. You may see him go very high in your local draft in the top 12 or the top 20 overall. This team, with all the receivers, there's going to be a ball share issue, and we'll see what happens. I think he's a very good back, and he's an above-average back, but I don't think he's a top 3 or 4 pick. Le'Veon Bell for the Jets, I think he's going to surprise a lot of people. He's a quality back. It was a very ugly situation last year, but I feel like he's going to do better than what the Jets have put out in the last couple of years. And Joe Mixon, who I believe is just getting better and better every year in Cincinnati. That team has lost a bunch of receivers, and they're relying heavy on the running game. So he may have a tougher slate because they're going to probably play run stuff defense against him. But for a goal line, he's like one of the best goal line backs I think that are out there. And let's take a look at the later picks. Nope. We'll move on to let's give you a quick list of other running backs that I do like. The later picks, we have Leonard Fournette for the Jacksonville Jaguars, Marlon Mack for the Indianapolis Colts, especially if Andrew Luck is out. Heavy running game there. They have a good offensive line. Aaron Jones for Green Bay, I think he's overvalued. I would take him in the later rounds, 3rd or 4th round. He needs to stay healthy. Todd Gurley is another risky player that I want to see him carry 30 times again. He may be one of these guys that gets 10 touches a game from now on just because he's got so many miles on him, and it's a risk. Dalvin Cook is another player. He's going to be the guy in Minnesota, but he's been unable to stay healthy, and that's a risky play, so I would take him later if he's available. David Montgomery for the Bears. They were able to let Jordan Howard go, but he's kind of an unproven commodity to me. So I want to see how he does over a full season as the number 1 guy. Damian Williams for the Kansas City Chiefs. Benefit of a great offensive line and a great offense. Sony Michel for New England. Austin Eckler for the Chargers. If Melvin Gordon sits out, he's going to be the number 1 guy. Tariq Cohen for the Bears. Phillip Lindsay for the Broncos. And Lamar Miller for the Houston Texans. Anybody else that's not on this list, I would take at the bottom. I would wait till the end and fill your fantasy team. So that is it for fantasy running backs. And let's go to fantasy defenses. Now, I did a similar thing here. I picked how I rank the top defenses, and these are the teams that I like the best. Obviously, Chicago Bears, number 1. They have a great defense. They have great return teams. LA Rams, amazing defense. Baltimore Ravens, another very good defense. LA Chargers, I think, are a very sneaky defense. They struggle a little bit because they play in that AFC West, against the Chiefs and the Chargers that are good offensive teams. But overall, a very good defense. Houston Texans are perennially good on defense. The Buffalo Bills are very good on defense. They have been even in the Sean McDermott era. And I expect them to be very good again. The Broncos are aging, but they're still very good. And the Eagles, I think, are also very good D for your fantasy purposes. Now, I have other picks for fantasy defenses and the overvalued teams, which doesn't mean they're bad. It just means that people will tend to pick them earlier on, and I would say let somebody else pick them or wait till they're available late in the draft. And those would be the Jacksonville Jaguars. They did not put up good defense last year. I'm not convinced. Minnesota Vikings, I think, are overrated defense. They give up a lot of run yards. The Cleveland Browns, everybody's so hot on the Cleveland Browns this year, and they're a competitive team, but they were very competitive in the mid to high 20s. What I mean by that is 28, 24 type of games, and that's not an elite defense. The team is better, there's no question, but that's not a defense that I'm looking to pick. The New Orleans Saints, they have a good pass rush, but they're going to give up a lot of points. Sacks are not worth enough in your fantasy league just to make it all about sacks. So I'd stay away from them. And Seattle Seahawks are a shell of their former defensive self. The Legion of Boom is all gone. Not a horrible defensive team, but not a team I'm looking to draft. And then the two teams that are undervalued that I think you can get at the end of your draft and I think are going to be sneaky good, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I talked about them a couple weeks ago. Bruce Arians taking over in Tampa Bay. I actually think that may be the best defense in the NFC South. I think they're going to surprise a lot of people and keep those games close. And then the San Francisco 49ers had a really good defense last year, but because they went through three quarterbacks, did not, they had a bad season, but, they didn't give up they weren't that bad defensively. If they had a team that could hold on to the ball longer and put some points on the board, I feel like that team, that defense could be, well above average. So, if Jimmy G or one of the other quarterbacks can, get that offense going and get that 21 points a game that they're going to need to be competitive, they're going to be a very good defense, I think. So that's it for fantasy this week. And next week we'll have the wide receivers and the tight ends, and I'm not going to cover kickers for various reasons. Maybe I'll talk about that a little bit next week. But we've got a few more things to go with, and we're going to start with college football. And what I've done for you folks is, for those of you that followed during my coverage of baseball, I would put up the Friday games and give you a model that I created that would give a projected line and then compare it to the line the Sportsbook is actually offering. And I've done that here for week one. We've got two games on Saturday, and then we've got to wait till next Thursday for four. I got four more games listed here. And then these are the lines that are currently available. And then what's in parentheses is what my model predicts how the teams will fare. So we're just going to look for some value and see what we can come up with. And we're going to start off with Florida versus Miami, which is in a neutral site. And that's Miami, Florida. University of Florida is 7-point favorites. Over-under is 47. And you can see my model says 7.25 and 47.62. So it's right on to what the Sportsbook is offering. So there's not really any value in that game. So we're just going to watch that and pass on it. And for you late night fans, University of Arizona at Hawaii. Hawaii is 11-point underdogs. 72.5 is the total. And then my model has it as 12-point underdogs and 70.42, pretty close to what that total is. And then next Thursday, we got UCLA at the University of Cincinnati. Cincinnati -3, 60.5 is the total. And then you've got, my model says -7.27. So that's tremendous value on the Bearcats. And 57.53 the total. So we're almost a field goal under. So it looks like value on both of those possible bets there. Then we've got Georgia Tech at number 1 Clemson. 35.5 is the point spread. 59.5 is the total. And my model says -29.34. And that's about a touchdown a difference. It's a big difference. So, and then 60.02 is the total, which is almost right on. So that'll be interesting to see how that total moves in the next 6 or 7 days. Now, Georgia Tech used to run that triple option offense, and they don't do that anymore. So, it will be interesting to see just how badly a lopsided game that turns out to be. Kent State at Arizona State. Arizona State -25-point favorites. 61.5 is the total. There you go. It says 21.64 is my model. So that's about a 3.5 points. And 59.47 the total is pretty close. And then Utah at BYU. BYU 4.5 underdogs, 48.5. I have BYU as 3-point underdogs and 46.16 total. Again, pretty close. That game is usually very competitive. So we'll see how that all shakes out. And then before we get to the picks, let's take a quick look at CFL. Week 11, and I went 0-3 last week, and you're like, John, why do you even bother with the CFL? NFL's almost here. I just find the games immensely entertaining, and it's been an interesting year. Seven of the nine teams in the league have lost their starting quarterback for at least a full game. Only BC and Edmonton have had their quarterbacks for the entire season. There's number 1 quarterbacks. Edmonton has given up the fewest sacks and as a defense has the most sacks, and BC has given up the most sacks, but for some reason their quarterback has stuck it out. But every other team has had quarterback issues, and it's pretty amazing if you think about what if the NFL, if 25 or 26 of those 32 teams lost their starting quarterback. It would be very difficult to gauge who is better than others and what second-string quarterbacks are going to be able to put points on the board. And it hasn't gone at all like I thought it would this year. So we'll see. We got 4 games this weekend starting tonight. Blue Bombers at the Eskimos, -6.5, 47. I like the over here. Eskimos are the best team in the league. Blue Bombers are the second or third best team in the league. They're doing their backup quarterback, but they have the best return game. They have 2 very good returners, a lot of speed on the Blue Bombers team, and the pass rush isn't out there when they're kicking kickoffs and punts. So I feel like the over is in play here. And then on Saturday, you've got the Red Blacks at the Rough Riders, -9.5, 48.5. Very difficult to gauge the point. I think the points will probably go over here. 9.5 is a lot. I don't know. The Rough Riders look good. They look good. Cody Fajardo gets better every week. Tiger Cats at BC Lions. BC Lions 4-point underdogs at home. 48 is the total. I think the under is in play here. Tiger Cats defense is great. Their offense is not great. That leans towards the under. BC is already playing out the string. They're 1-8 or 1-9, and there's no reason for them to even really try at this point. Then the Alouettes at the Argonauts, +7 and 55. I feel like that's a bad number. Under 55 here. The Alouettes scored a bunch of points late against Calgary, and then they had a really high-scoring overtime game, and I think that's kind of a fallacy. And the Argonauts only scored like 11 or 12 points last week or something ridiculously low like that. So 55. I'm not sure on the spread. I think the Alouettes are the favorites there, but if you're still watching CFL like I am, that's how I handicap the games this week. So let's take a look at my picks. And I got 2 CFL picks and 3 college picks for you. So tonight we got the Bombers and the Eskimos over 47, minus 107. We have the Alouettes and the Argonauts under 55 on Sunday, minus 111. And then next Thursday, we got 3 picks for you. Cincinnati Bearcats, minus 3 at minus 105. Georgia Tech, plus 35.5. And hope the subs get in early, plus 101. And finally, BYU at home, plus 4.5, minus 104. So, hoping college football can break our streak, and we might even have an NFL pick next week because the first game's on a Thursday night. So, one more week of NFL preview. Week 2, a full week of college football next week. Review of the Del Lago Sportsbook. So much exciting stuff to talk about. My favorite time of year. Thanks for tuning in. We'll have another episode next week, and I'm going to play the outro music for you, and let's get some winners. Take care, everybody. See you next time.